This week on the Push Pull Legs podcast, Josh Silverman is back and we're discussing everything you guys are going to learn on our workshop. Oh, and stupid things on the internet this week. Is a doozy. Three, two, one. We just can't get rid of this guy, Dan.
Hey guys, welcome to the Push Pull Legs podcast with myself, Damik.
And me, Tom Hall. And one more.
And me, Josh Silverman. I'm back. Well, hold on a minute. How am I on here and Dan as well? I
know. I can feel myself getting squeezed out here. I can feel it. It's happening more and more. Like
it's getting logged on. It's like when someone leaves a company or whatever, or you like put your notice in, and then you can see them interviewing other people. Yeah. But imagine now the interview is kind of. No, someone's already replaced me, and now they're being shown around the office, and they're showing my desk, or asking me to move out of the way. Yeah, it's getting a bit awkward, but
it's almost like, are you still using that drawer? Can I put my?
Yeah. Can I start putting my stuff in now already?
I mean, yeah, I logged on, and Tom was like, "Oh, we just got to wait for Josh." I was like, "Oh, have we?" Oh,
I didn't even know.
I didn't even tell him to.
He didn't even tell me. You see, didn't even tell me that. So it's all being done behind closed doors as well.
Surprise! I thought it'd be a nice
we tried
surprise,
to put it at the time at cricket, but we got the time wrong. So we was going to start at 6:15, and awkwardly it was at 5. Oh yeah, it's all awkward, but I feel fine.
All right, so really, Josh actually wanted to come on today because he was like, "Oh, I've been on for like 2 months," and he got really annoyed. So.
Wants his airtime, doesn't he?
I know, clearly. But we'd already had our customer like one guest a month. I'm plugging myself back in because you guys are filling up my battery. Such wonderful faces on my screen. So Josh wanted to do a little special because we have got something. I mean, Dan just said it's like not this weekend, but the weekend after, right? Come round quick. On our little collaboration with Josh and his gang.
Can you pronounce the actual name right yet, Tom?
What, London Muscle?
No.
LDNM. There we go.
Well done. Now do it fast.
Definitely not.
It's like
Tom's there like that. He's like that going,
yeah, exactly.
I always write it the wrong way around. I like LDMN.
Just keep doing it now just to piss Josh off, mate.
I think it was mainly prompted by... So, obviously, I taught nutrition... weekend just gone, and someone came and asked me and said, "Why would I benefit from it?"
Was it just like, "Can you guys stop teaching nutrition?" And they were like, "Can we finally actually move?"
Yeah. It was literally like, "Well, what is the course? Can you give me an explanation?" And I didn't find it hard to do it in a small like sort of segment or whatever. But hopefully, it's something. This would be an episode to refer back to and go, "Listen, why don't you listen to that?" Anytime we put it on in the future or even now and go, listen to that, that will give you all the information you need to know on why to use it, how to use it, etc. Because it's hard, right, to say, oh, we're going to teach you programming and exercise selection. Yeah, but I've done that on my course. And you're like, no. You didn't do that on your course.
Trust me, you didn't.
Yeah, trust me. 8 reps does not get you big biceps. I've been trying for years. It's not just about that. So it was like, yeah, that I kind of get that. I kind of get people think it's beneath them when actually... When you look at it, this is what really matters, and this is, if you can nail this is like you as a PT, you're kind of elevating yourself already.
I think it's a first starter thing as well, right? So, I mean, I continually use it, but starting out, just being blessed with some of this stuff, it would have been gold. And realising, this is a decent path to be on. These guys that have been doing it for a while tend to use this. It'd be phenomenal to have. And you're basically just picking off our brains. Collectively, how many years in the industry?
So what? I'm 12.
You're
years.
12. Do we count football, Dan? I don't know.
I think so, mate. Yeah.
We're probably collaborative about 15, so it's 27 to 30 years. So that's
my age.
Bad, isn't it? Jesus.
Yeah, that is old. That is very old.
Yeah, that's very old. Yeah, but also, I think it's not only that; it's probably saved money of how much we've probably wasted of either listening to people or going to courses or buying books or being, roped into, I was about to say a name there, but nearly, being roped into certain courses where we've probably spent thousands collectively, and someone can now come, not have to worry about looking at all that rubbish and go, oh, I can come and spend the day here and I've saved myself probably near on £5,000 by not having to sift through the rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's in itself is the key to
we've
why
done
you
that
should
for
come.
you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, don't waste any money.
You make your own mistakes, but yeah, Jesus, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Is Isabel
Or
joining
make
us?
mistakes with good tools and just maybe do them badly for now.
Yeah.
You know.
So I heard Isabel in the background. I thought she was going to come on the show.
I know, I literally was about to mute it then and go and scream it out there. It does my head
She
in
would
every single
definitely
time.
have a lot more input and
she
it would
would.
be more valuable, 100%.
100% it would be, yeah. Don't worry about that.
Dan, I said to somebody else the other day, and I was like, I just skip through Dan's stories and just watch Isabel, and that's about it.
Yeah,
You're not the only one, mate. It's a constant source of frustration for me. But you know what? I've cottoned onto it now, so now I'm just going to start putting it all over
Yeah,
it.
you just have her there whilst you're speaking nutrition. I'm like, what are you doing? I thought Isabel was talking. All right.
It'd be interesting if Instagram bring out some form of data where you can check the length of time on a story. That'd be good to see if how many people skip through certain stories. And then Dan just sees every time I'm on, it's a 1 second view. But when it's
Yeah, see this bold ad, people just go skip.
yeah.
Like that, yeah. But no, I think like we talked about the assessment stuff as well. I think that obviously with the way that it's moving, like more and more people are going online now. I think again, like you said about separating yourself as a trainer from other people and understanding how you can still assess someone's movement online, and that will separate you from other trainers based on seeing someone perform 4 or 5 different movements with no fancy equipment. You'll be able to get an idea of, well, how do they squat, how do they hinge, how do they do all these movements, so that you can effectively program for them rather than just give them a cookie cutter training plan, which 99% of all the other online coaches are doing. So, and that'll get you better results in the long run as well. So it doesn't just go to like, oh, I'm a one-to-one PT. If I'm online, it doesn't make a difference. It's not going to help me, because it fundamentally will improve everything about your programming from the first day to the last day.
And I think when I talk about the different avenues of PT at the end of the PT courses and say about online PT, people do sometimes talk about, oh, is online PT dangerous because you're never there? And I guess it's just a way of checking in every time or every now and then to go, if I just ask them to do a row or if I ask them to do a squat or deadlift, let me see how they do it when I just ask them to do it. And I can kind of 9 times out of 10 gather, oh, at least, I'm quite confident it's been safe, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and the way we designed some of the screening protocol, because we did have that in mind, especially when obviously Dan's involved, because all of his clients are online, right? So we've got to build a sort of screening system that can be online based. So a lot of the stuff, well, basically all of the assessment screening assessment, we'll go into that in a sec, is no equipment. That's how I based it, and that's what's going to happen, because I don't use any equipment when I first assess. Just want to see.
Hold on.
Oh,
don't use the FMS kit.
Yeah, apart from the gold FMS kit I have in the corner. Yeah.
Actually, there's a PT in Canary Wharf. They've got a wooden one that folds away and goes in a little bag. I need to get one. 100%. I'm going to get one, and I'm literally going to carry that bag with me everywhere.
You will as well. You'll be that nerd that just like carries it everywhere. Glasses on. Hi guys. Let's do it.
That's it. That was literally a great representation.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's spurred on as well. So today I was obviously teaching some of the guys third space. If you don't know, I'm Tom's basically boss. But yeah, I was teaching about our basic screen, and a lot of the questions came up. And this is again something that, even though you guys have kind of pinpointed me as the FMS guy, and people believe that, probably don't believe Dan because no one believes Dan. But they've kind of, people will ask me and go, oh, but you think that FMS will screen an injury, and that means that if someone squats like that, they're going to get injured. And it kind of sparked quite a good conversation today, and that was another reason to maybe talk to you guys.
100%. I think like the
mistaken, or you're going to be quite disappointed with that.
Yeah. So I think with we want to go into definition of screening, assessment, and test. Is basically, is that what you were discussing today?
Yeah. And what's the point in them? Does one lead to another? When would you not move to the other, etc., etc.?
I mean, off the top of my head, and I don't have a dictionary definition for each of those, but I would class, so my movement screen is based off how somebody moves, and whether I can basically predict what they can do in the gym, and what they can do well. I'm not really predicting any injury. I'm not going to see if there's any. I can just see whether they can do stuff in the gym, basically. An assessment is more based off, I've got different parameters to basically dive into after my screen. So if I see a screening system, I screen like a movement, then I might assess a joint to see what the range of motion is, and then I can test and retest that. So the test is based off getting different results and basically improving it. That's how I would judge those three. I don't know whether you take that any differently, Josh.
Mine is near enough the same. Mine, a screen is, can they do the activity that you've asked from A to B in what we would consider an okay fashion? So can I walk from one end of the room to the other? Can you do it? There's a screen. An assessment would be, okay, how good is that? How bad is that? And why is it bad or good? So for instance, okay, if they've not got good recovery when they walk or whatever, is it down to hamstrings? Do they have issues with their ankle flexibility? So we'd assess the joint, just like what you just said. Is it a mobility issue? Is it a stability issue, motor control issue? And then testing it would be at what level, or let's say, how do they perform doing it? So for instance, screen someone in the squat. We can see they're okay in doing it. Can we now test or assess the ankles and hips to see if the other one is the weakest link? And then to test the squat, we'd 1RM strength fit to see how they perform, or the maximal performance they can do in it. But I guess it's near enough the same with what you said.
So the too long didn't read of that is screening, can they do it? Assessment, how do they do it? Testing, how can they improve on it? Boom.
Right, Dan.
There you go.
Wow.
Boom. There you go. That's right.
So a screen I define today as just our minimum operating procedure, as in what's our standard operating procedure when a human walks into the gym before we just go, oh, okay, let's squat. And we kind of look at the Hippocratic Oath, or that's what we looked at, of first do no harm. And it's like, well, how do we know we're not doing any harm? Or how do we know if harm can potentially occur? And by harm, I don't mean injury. Harm can literally mean loading a faulty movement pattern, so later on they feel a bit stiff in the wrong places. Literally, just how they feel or whatever. Or perform worse in doing that movement. Because if we want to see certain parameters in a squat where there's no forward lean, or the kind of tibia angle is the same as the upper body angle or whatever, the spine angle, we don't want to start loading dysfunctional movement if that means that's going to pattern the exercise, I guess, and that person, then it's harder to correct it. I don't know. But yeah, I was just saying, look, we first just need to look at something before we know if we want to work on that technique. Otherwise, we don't know if we need to work on it. And by the time we put a weight on it, we may not be too late, but we may have missed a trick there.
Yeah, 100%. And there's also an art in whether you even need to touch anything as well. I think what you'll find out is when we'll teach this is when to step back and realise, oh, it's not actually going quite correctly then, but then you can intervene, coach it out of somebody within 2 seconds, and suddenly it's fixed. And was that an assessment? No, I didn't have to really go down any route. It was just an intervention, a coaching intervention, not like basically an assessment intervention, which I think a lot of people think screening and correctives, and they go, oh my God, I've got to learn all this other stuff and do range of motion tests. And it's like, hang on a minute, no, our screen's going to be this. And then within that screen, say you've got 20 to 30 minutes to complete that screen within your first session so your client doesn't get too bored. It's only boring people make people bored, basically. But if you keep them entertained, they should be probably fine. But it's basically, can you trick it? Can you change it very quickly through coaching cues? And that's something we're going to discuss as well during the day. And that's invaluable. That's literally only knowledge that I've picked up over probably the last 3 years in just trying to coach somebody out of something. More than going, oh, actually, I've got an exercise for that. We need to spend 10 minutes doing that now. I'm totally wasting, rabbit holing.
Yeah. And we done that. When we looked at single leg stuff today, and someone had a varus of the knee, and we were like, okay, what would you do to correct that? And some people were like, oh, we'd add a step here, or we do a deficit here, or we do this and that. And I said, okay, let's look at a corrective as, mate, don't do that. Keep your knee facing forward and just hold there. I said, and then it corrected it. Did it correct it? Yeah. So what was the corrective? Just telling them not to do it. That's it. They just don't know what you want them to do sometimes.
Yeah, I think people get so caught up with it all. I think from the whole, I don't know if it's years ago. I don't know if it's just that I'm not in the industry anymore in terms of one-to-one as much as I used to be. But the whole correctives thing used to be such a buzzword, and you used to have to get, like, for correctives, it was almost like you would get a band out, you would get a different, like, a kettlebell, you would get something different, and like you just said there, actually a corrective was going, don't do that. Or a corrective exercise, like a corrective exercise can be like just a different squat movement. It doesn't have, like, it's still a squat, but just like a different movement where you place the weight is a corrective by definition. But people used to think it was like, the way you had to do it was like tie a band around someone's knee to pull it out this way, and then tell them to then stand on their other little toe, and you're like, come on, like, you don't have to cue like tib, you know, they were going on about like, you know, you've got to make sure that, you know, you hold your transverse abdominis and all this, and you speaking to a client and they're like, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, he doesn't need that sort of shit. And
it was the one I used to see. Yeah, it was about 4 or 5 years ago. It was like feeding the dysfunction was the big thing, right? So you just grab a band. If somebody's got valgus, you pull the knee into valgus, which is, it's fair enough. Like, it's a good corrective. But I'm gonna bet that maybe a lot of the trainers haven't tried to been like, stop doing that. I'm gonna hold my hand here. Don't touch my hand.
Yeah,
there was I think it was. Helm's done a meta-analysis on a study which was about actually doing bad technique on purpose for the person to correct themselves and stuff like that. So that might be the feeding dysfunction thing. But again, you're going to go through all of that. You're going to make them do bad technique, and then be like, oh, or you could have just gone, don't let your torso come forward. Oh, okay. There you go, I'm all right now. And you're like, well, I didn't need to do anything. I just need to tell you don't bloody do it.
Yeah, that's an art of coaching, though, right? So it's only learned by somebody telling you to do that, where maybe you've seen stuff Instagram or somebody you follow and like, yeah, this is the one to do. This definitely need to do this. Or maybe a physio that doesn't do much coaching, like one-to-one with. We discussed that with Alex. Like, he doesn't get as much contact time with his NHS stuff, so he ends up trying to give simple stuff, but some physios tend to overcomplicate it, which could happen in assessments, right? So
here's a question: if you saw a screen, and let's say, for instance, they wasn't doing a correct, so we use that term, let's say a squat, for instance, or they couldn't get their arms, I don't know, above their head correctly without compensating from the spine or whatever, when would you not correct that? As in, when would you take the decision to go, do you know what, at this moment in time, we're not even going to try and correct it, and we're not even going to try and work on trying to make that better for a small period of time?
I think so. What, within the first session or within my programming? Like
within your program. So let's and I've got my thoughts on it, but it's when would you go, do you know what, I don't even want to touch your movement. I'm just going to make sure we're going to do movements that don't further hurt you, but I'm going to keep the way that you're doing it. As in, I don't care if it looks like crap, as long as you don't hurt yourself, I'm cool.
Yeah, so I've got a knockdown list of what I'd start to look at. And one of the biggest things that will always come back to is client's goal, why they came to me. That's going to be number one. So if the client sucks, say, overhead shoulder flexion, so they can't put their hand over their head very well without going chest up, cranking their back. If they came for me for weight loss or whatever, I'm probably going to be like, all right, well, you don't really need to put your head over. Like your hand over your head, it's not going to be fine. The corrective measures, if I can't fix it very quickly, either by coaching cue or a corrective measure, like a corrective exercise, some sort of, I don't know, CNS stimulant within like the 2 to 5 minutes of the screen and that first session, then I'm going to look at like just putting in stuff just to keep them moving, or mobility, stability, that kind of stuff all the way through their programming. And that's what we'll talk about in the course, is long-term over short-term correctives and how they stick. So I class short-term was the little magic-y stuff that Josh likes to do sometimes in a session, just to correct something. Immediately I've got better range of motion. Cool. All right, but we know that it's not going to stay, because it's great for that 5 minutes, and then you will return back to where you are most. So the long-term corrective is something that's going to stabilize that range of motion. So I would start looking at basically building that into their programming, but that might be over it'll probably be 4 weeks of doing stuff, seeing if it changes, then I'd do other stuff. I know Dan's discussed this before, and I don't know whether we concur, Dan, because I think we've actually slightly disagreed on some of this stuff before. I only like one stimulus at a time, and then Dan will be like, I don't really mind as long as it's working, we'll just try a load of stuff. I'm just simple in the brain, so I don't really. I'm like one thing, that's it. One thing, that's it. All right. But you're like, yeah, fuck it.
I think it depends on the individual. Like you can't sit there and go, oh, this one person who can't reach over the head, what would you do? Because you might give them one cue and they're fucking straight away get it and they know it and they can fix it, and then you move on to the next thing, and then you might refer back to it occasionally and go, well, make sure you're still doing that, and give them something else. And again, I also think there's also, from speaking to a client and getting to know them in the gym, whether they're acutely aware of their body positioning, and if they're more aware of their body and you give them a few cues and they seem to be quite good with it, you could probably throw more than one thing at them to improve on at a time because they seem quite aware. And again, totally biased, and like this is probably not an evidence-based quote or anything like that, but the younger they are, the better they tend to be. I mean, that's just, as they get older, you probably throw less at them just because, again, there's so many things going on with them and so many ingrained bad movements that they probably will take one thing at a time. But going back to the original point, I think if you're screening someone and you do overhead element of a squat pattern and they haven't got good shoulder flexion, they can't get that range, but their hip hinge is okay, you would go, well, what's the primary goal here? There's a hierarchy, and it would be, right, well, you could probably still work on a hip hinge pattern, a squat pattern, and focus on some thoracic mobility exercise, and then retest in 4 weeks and go, is it any better? And if it is, then there could be something else in your programming that's meant that they're just moving now as a whole, and they're just better movers, which could then help that. Whereas if you retested in 4 weeks' time and the shoulder flexion was the same, you would then probably need a direct thing to fix that, I suppose. Because I find with a lot of people, once you start moving as a whole, initially on a first assessment, a lot of people just move poorly, whether it's shoulder flexion, hip flexion, whatever, they just move poorly. And after 4 weeks of moving, it's amazing how much these things tend to improve without directly cueing them, just because they've got an awareness of their body, like I referred to at the start. It's amazing, that ability to have an awareness of your body and how it moves, because that takes time to practice, and a lot of these people have never practiced it. They just have usually jogged, and that's all they do for weight loss or whatever, or for being healthy, and the range of motion involved in that is tiny. So when you start saying to them, put your arms over your head and squat, and they're like, whoa, hold on a minute, and just by doing some bodyweight stuff, they start to progress. So there's definitely a hierarchy of importance, as we've just discussed. And I think, like you said, as we're going to go over at the weekend, it will be, at what point do you not do a movement at the detriment to just because someone can't do a certain part of the movement? Well, that doesn't really make a huge difference to the lower portion of it, for example. So it's understanding all those things, because you could look at someone trying to do a overhead squat and be like, oh my god, they can't do that. But that doesn't mean they can't do a split squat. And it's having the ability to look at someone and go, okay, they can't do this quite difficult exercise, but I can see the potential there to do slightly easier exercise, which means you start them further down the hierarchy or whatever it is, and you can build them up. And that's the art, Tom said, the art of coaching, is being able to pick up on that straight away, rather than launching straight into an assumption based on one movement, which a lot of people do.
So I said there was three things that I combated in saying you don't always need to correct, or you don't always need to change, or whatever. Is A, first and foremost, strength training in itself will help correct something most of the time. If you gain strength at your end range, you're going to increase that end range. It's just the way in which the strength curve works and the way in which our body works. So people forget that strength training correctly is a corrective on its own.
Tony Jenico talks about that. He's a big guy on that. He's like, if you just get stronger, you'll be amazed. And that's kind of what I said about 4 weeks of training properly and moving well. You just start being amazed by how. It's why people get so sore after doing like an initial assessment. They can be like, oh my god, I'm so sore. It's like, yeah, because you're moving now. Yeah. Like you've just not moved properly before through that full range that you mentioned.
And so Spina talks about force through joy. I mean, some of the stuff that FRC talks about, which is what, and I'll go through some of this on the day as well, is all around. He does try and talk about the evolution of people, and that we've stopped doing certain movements, but we stopped doing certain movements for good reason, as in we just don't need to do them anymore. So sometimes squatting with your hands above, I mean, when was the last time with your hands above your head you've done a squat and had to put, like, you just don't do that movement. So do you care if someone can't do an overhead squat? Well, technically not, because when was the last time you picked something up and squatted down with it and gone, right, I'm going to hold it for a while and hold it up? I mean, obviously there's other things involved, but then the next one that I said as well was, well, so I was originally a kayaker. That was my sport. So my shoulders are very flexible. However, in order to get the paddle to do something called stern rudder or bow rudder, which is a movement, a turn, in order to get the paddle far back to the boat, I'd have to obviously lean with my torso backwards. So imagine my rib cage coming up as I leant back with my shoulder to get a bigger turning circle, because that created more movement. Now, because of that, it took me a while to stop that kind of pattern of anytime I reached above my head, my body would just go with me, because I'm doing that in training, I'd do that in competitions, it was just in me. Now, if a PT or a coach would have changed that, that would have made me a worse kayaker. Because if I didn't get a full turning circle in slalom, I would have lost points, basically. I would have hit the rails, or I wouldn't have actually gone through the gates. So sometimes, and this is what I was trying to say, not all the time, but as a loose rule, sometimes if you take someone and make them more human and less athlete, because athlete movements or chucking something at one position all the time or doing one thing, that's not natural for humans, technically. So making them a better human will sometimes make someone a worse athlete. So we had like a boxer in the room, and quite frankly, they were forward like this, shoulders like that. They couldn't get above their head, and you was like, well, what's your goal right now? Is it to be a better boxer? Yes. All right, well, I'm not going to change that. I might do some stuff to alleviate pain if you've got it, but you haven't. So I'm not going to make you a better human to sacrifice your sport, because at this moment in time, that's your goal. Imagine they came back and they went, oh my God, I got knocked out in the second round. I couldn't throw punches. I had no force. Yeah, but don't worry, mate. You can put your hands above your head. So everything's good. Don't worry. So that's what I mentioned as well, basically. So the three things were, A, strength training is just a corrective anyway, so that should help it. B was, well, sometimes the person doesn't really need to do that movement, so let's focus on the bigger movements that we care about, that's really going to get bang for the buck. And then C, well, if they want to be a better athlete, sometimes making them a better human may actually be at detriment to an athlete.
Yeah. I think that number one point, I think, overrides all of our training. Yeah. I program into a 4-week plan, but it's the word strength. I feel like if I say that, the immediate thought for most people who probably don't class themselves as corrective exercise people is that strength is, all right, that just means heavyweight, low rep, right? That means you're lifting, I'm powerlifting. It's like, whoa, no, it doesn't mean you're powerlifting. It just means you're doing the correct exercises that we've kind of decided upon through our continuum, or whatever you've scored on your screening system, and then you're doing them well, end range, and you're getting better either week by week, month by month at them. That is strength training.
I think Josh made a great point about the whole human and athlete thing. I think because that also comes into your screen or your assessment or your test, is that it's got to be relevant to the person and what you're thinking about. So assessing someone, again, whose main function is that they just want to be able to walk. Again, I've PT'd one-to-one people, 70-year-olds who just wanted to just have a more longevity. And like you said, Josh, it's actually for them, they do need certain aspects that a 30-year-old guy wouldn't need to worry about. And that, for them, lifting an arm over their head is important, and bending down to the floor is important. Whereas actually for a 30-year-old guy who can, is pretty into his sport and he wants to be better at rugby or whatever, then there's elements to it. It's more important to think, actually, you need to be better at X, Y, and Z movement. And I think that's where, before you even start a screen or an assessment, understanding the person that's in front of you is important, and their goal, because that will change how you not score the assessment, but how much weight you place on certain tests or certain aspects of the assessment. And I think that these are the sorts of things that people don't talk about when it comes to assessments. We joke that you're the FMS guy, but it's true. But it's also that you will also go into a test going, right, well, this is a 19-year-old kid who's an athlete who wants to be a basketballer. Well, you're going to approach that assessment very differently to 40-year-old office worker, but you'll still use the same assessment and the same screen. I keep using all these words interchangeably just to piss you guys off.
That's fine.
You still use those things to their own, using all the merits involved within it, but with that person in mind. And I think that this is the kind of thing that, like you said before, you can't get over in a page on a website or in we're doing a screening workshop. It's no, but it's what happens before that. It's who's in front of you. And then you then apply what principles of that assessment, of that screening, to that individual to get you the end result. Because there are some athletes or some people you might spend, like Tom said, 30 minutes assessing. I've done people before where I've seen them, they've walked in and I've done 4 or 5 exercises of a screen, and I've just gone, right, let's go. We're wasting your time going any further than this. And that, I think it's that people struggle with. It's having the confidence to go, right, I know based on what I've learned that this guy can move perfectly well. I don't need to bother him with any of assessments. Let's just get straight into strength training because, as you said, it's a corrective. Whereas I think there's an assumption that if you have a screening protocol like the FMS or something like that, you have to run through it systematically, step by step, go through all these things. And I'm like, no. For some people, you don't need to do every single one. And likewise, with what we're going to present, I suppose, is there's elements to it that you can skip, but without understanding why, you won't have the confidence to do that, and then you'll just waste people's time. So again, in terms of retaining your clients or getting client buy-in on that first session, a client's going to know if you're wasting the time or not, because I can do this. It's easy. What am I wasting my time for? And that's important.
Yeah, and I would add to that as well. If you're spending longer than 10 minutes on a screen, you are probably doing a disservice to your client anyway. Like, even 5 minutes, I would say above that is too much. And I think if you're doing more than that, you're probably trying to find an issue that isn't there, or trying to get perfect movement, which we know nothing about. And I mean, one was on the back of that. I remember I screened he was interested in looking at the assessment side of things, which is the SFMA, which is the FMS assessment side of things. So I did a screen, done FMS, then done the assessments joint by joint on our managing director, and found a load of issues with his shoulders. And I was like, okay, what else are you doing? What are your goals currently? Well, I'm doing CrossFit and I'm doing boxing and kickboxing pad work. Okay, are you prepared to stop doing that in order for your shoulders to be better? No, I'm not. All right, fine. Well, I'll tell you what, forget this for now, because trust me, you don't want me to do any correctives on you because it's not going to work anyway, because you're just going to go and hammer them anymore. So come back to me when you want to change that. Done.
That's it. It's client-centered, isn't it, right? It's that person in front of you. And I think that's the thing that people struggle with a lot. And again, I do it with the online stuff. It's like understanding your client, their needs, their wants, to go, actually, let's have a look at these movements. Let's have a look at how you row, how you press, how you squat, how you hinge. And then there's others that you just know that actually they probably won't need it. It doesn't mean you don't get them to still try and send it over anyway, because again, people think they know what they're doing half the time. But I think there are some clients who, like I said, there's certain red flags that you'll just go, right, I need to see certain things. So for me, if I get my clients to fill out their training assessment or their training, their initial form, that's quite in depth. It's kind of like, if it says any previous injuries and anything related to hip or shoulder, I'm like, right, I want to see X, Y, and Z. If it's like no injuries, which again is extremely rare, and I go, are you sure you've never had injuries? Oh, well, actually, I had, But it's straight away you start getting a picture in your head of what videos you want to see of them based on that information. And like you said, if you've got a boxer with a load of previous shoulder injuries, it's kind of like, well, actually, maybe there is something wrong with the way you're doing things. But like you said previously, if he's a boxer and he's had no previous shoulder injuries and he's okay, then you're not going to fuck around with anything.
And this is the big one as well. And we were talking about it in the session today, and I was like, right, show me a hip hinge. Okay, we saw someone who was, bending their back rather than hinging, and that dreaded, they've got an arched back as they do a deadlift. Okay, and I said, what's the problem that they're going to injure themselves? I said, listen, I've been in gyms for 12 years. I haven't seen one client hurt their back doing a deadlift. I haven't seen it. You guys might have come across some, but the amount of people doing it wrong in the gym compared to the amount of people that actually get injured doing it wrong is a different rate. It's a small percentage. And of course, we don't want that to happen. But at the same time, we don't give enough credit to how resilient the body actually is. So to say to a client, you're definitely going to get injured, the likelihood is they're probably not. They may be doing some issues and some damage for later on in life where, that they have worse movement quality. But telling someone, you're definitely going to slip your disc if you pick up the weight like that, most clients probably not, because they probably don't pick up a level that, as in the weight that they that would happen. Mm-hmm. And it's saying, they'll definitely get injured. The chances and the likelihood is they don't, and they won't get injured. They'll probably get some issues later on in life, 100%. But injury risk and screening probably they're not definite, or they're not definitive. I don't know what your thoughts are, but
no, I don't think they kind of relate into each other, but you can't with an absolute basically say you're like, in my previous experience that might be good for this, or that might mislay this, but you can't go, you're definitely going to get injured there. That's going to be an issue long term. Like, well, hang on a minute, I haven't had an issue for 35 years, so why am I suddenly going to get this now? And then they're going to look at you and be like, well, it's your fault because you prescribed this weird exercise that I've never done, and now it's suddenly fallen apart. And you're like, no, that was good. It was really good for you. I was like, this probably wasn't, was it? It's like you've just broken them for no apparent reason. But what you want to talk about with the screening systems, so screening and the programming, for each, because weirdly, with people with very similar mindset, all of us, we have slightly different clienteles. So I am heavily general population, probably 30s, 35 upwards with some sort of pain. And my screening systems are maybe a little bit longer than the like 10 minutes that can take. So I go through probably 20 to 30 minutes on a screening system. But yeah, if I see somebody moving great, then yeah, it's fine. But more likely my clientele are coming with a pre-existing injury, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time around stuff that I think is going to happen there. And to be honest, the screen might involve, I might rewrite an optional bit. It might involve exercises that I think I will want to include based off this guy's history or based off whatever their injury was, that I want to see whether I'm pitching correctly within like a screen to take them further. So like side planks, dead bugs, all this kind of stuff. What is their threshold? What is their rotary stability? I've got a lot of spinal guys, and that generally tends to add in, which I think we just don't really use. We tend to look at like the big movements and presses and like overhead screening and squats and stuff. And rotary stability, obviously playing like golf, I'm sure it was massive for kayaking as well. Rotary stability is pretty big. And you play cricket down, it's massive for you as well. So any kind of rotation.
Yeah, he's weird.
Slinging things. So yeah, that's what I would tend to do with my programming. It with general pop, it is basic strength training, 100%. That's all. That is basically what I do. I don't do anything else, honestly. I very rarely go above like 10, 12 repetitions, and I still class that as really strength training for the general public. It's basically covering all bases. They're still working to an intensity that they will correct themselves. The only reason why I'm probably making them go that way, because I've let them pick their own weight, and then I want it to get heavier by the end, and I've gone, yeah, just keep going, AMRAP it, go.
And I mean, I used to do similar to what Dan does, which was heavily body composition, but it's not as easy as that. But mine, since working at Third Space, mine's changed. And actually, I doubled my client base today, Tom. Because I
wow.
One person. two clients. I mean, tell me about, I'm really tired. So, yeah, I need a glass of wine tonight. But actually now, because of pricing and stuff, my clientele, or my two clients, literally are just older generation people who want to come in. They want to train because they know it's healthier for them, and they just want to feel good in the session. So in the session, if I put an exercise on them that is so technically difficult for them, just from their patterning or whatever, that I am using so many correctives, so many cues to say this is wrong, or no, do it like this, no, do it like that, they're not going to go away from the session feeling good. Especially because both my clients, because of the price point, they are very high in their jobs. They don't want to feel like someone's telling them you're wrong, you're crap, you're rubbish. They're high stressed anyway. So I've now used screening as, okay, how can I make that movement look correct, but by looking at different weight placements? For instance, rather than a back squat, looking at a goblet squat. So they're still getting the movement, we're still getting what we want, the activation that we want, but I'm telling them what they're doing well, more so than what we need to correct. And so my clientele now is more along the lines of, just don't make them feel embarrassed in the session, and make them feel better when they go away, that they've moved better and felt better at the same time. And that's all they care about. They're like, I just want to come in and train because I want to feel good. But at the same time, I know that doesn't mean trying to coach them some crazy conventional deadlift or deficit deadlift. That means I'm telling them the whole time, no, you're doing that wrong. No, now do this. No, do that. They're going to be like, oh, what's going on? I'm here to move a bit better, if that makes sense.
And you can take that one step, even if they had like slight asymmetries, etc. If you coach them a goblet squat, it's pretty simple. And then you're like, all right, I've coached them a goblet squat. I knew they had some sort of right hip shift. Suddenly I can go into, all right, just move that goblet slightly to the left for me. All right, cool. You're going to hold it there. Now, suddenly we're in corrective exercise just because I've shifted this slightly. And I'm shifting over to that left hip instead of that right hip. And then we're starting to move. And that was totally engaging for the person. Because you've already taught them fundamental skill, they've learnt it. Cool, is it in the stick? Probably, it was dead easy. All right, move that.
It's got a hip shift, though. I usually bring out the balloons at that point.
Wait, what?
Lollipop stick as well.
Lollipop stick. I thought it was that. No, my way far too simple. It must be wrong.
Usually use the screen for mainly for your guys, because your guys is obviously body comp, and I guess your screen's probably more testy. But yeah, I mean, what would you do for body comp?
I mean, straight away you can tell that you get someone's progress pictures through, and you can kind of get a feel of posture. For one, like a lot of my clients, they tend to come. There's like 25 to 40, I suppose, busy, want to look better. They just want to look better. Like that's their main goal. Like not many people come to me and go, "Oh, I want to just feel better." They've usually got some sort of performance goal in terms of like a certain level of strength they want to achieve, and they kind of know their way around the gym. But that can also come with its own downfalls, that they've ingrained movement patterns that are poor and stuff like that. But by and large, like a lot of mine programming, like I'm still like have Tom in my head the whole time, but I tend to like, I guess on the whole, if I was to look at all my programming, I'd probably limit overhead pressing as a general rule. Probably with most people, I don't program a lot of that, and if I do, it's single arm, it's standing. It's but that's also
if you use a landmine, you have got full marks on top.
yeah. Every one of my clients, I haven't got a landmine. Like shit.
Buy one down.
The day that one of my clients sends me a landmine video on the shoulder press, I'm going to just send it to Tom. I'm going to be like, yes, look at it. Yeah, it's because usually a lot of them have come from a background of doing too much pressing anyway. So it's like, well, I don't have to limit that. Most of them usually have pretty poor back development and stuff like that. So as a whole, I tend to kind of program on the whole more pull in than push in and all that sort of stuff. And I kind of say to them, look, I want to see, most videos I get from clients, the first couple of weeks will be like your squat pattern, your hip hinge pattern. How's that look? Correct that first. Then after that, it will be, right, I want to see your push and your pull movements. And again, like I tend to then stay away from things like barbell bench press, and I pretend to do more dumbbell because again, a little bit less can go wrong. People don't try and go as heavy, and it's easier to get out of it. All this sort of stuff, easier for you on your shoulders, that kind of thing. So I tend to kind of stick to certain things that I know kind of work quite well. So again, I don't do a huge amount of bent over rows because again, most people, unless I'm there in person, I'm not going to trust they're going to do it brilliantly. Dumbbell row, single arm, it's just a lot less things that can go wrong. And I think as an online coach, you have to think about your programming, and from that point of view, that you screen someone and go, right, I know they can do this movement, this movement, this movement. I'm not going to make it any harder for them by trying to get them to do anything crazy, because ultimately all they want to do is get stronger on those movements and see progress in the mirror. And I posted a client recently, actually, Liam, on my Instagram, and he put his pictures together and was like, oh, look, what do you think? And I was like, I think you look really, really good. And I was like, have you noticed your posture's changed? And he was like, I didn't even notice that. He's like, but it looks he's like, before, slouched over, head forward, and all of a sudden he's now more upright. And I actually haven't done any correctives with him. It was just a case of him going, right, I want you to think about how you're how you're training. He had an in-person PT and stuff like that, but I think it's getting him to think more about using different areas of what he's doing, rather than just trying to focus on getting a big chest, which is what most guys want, is then going, actually, you look better if you had bigger delts and bigger back, and you can do that other ways, and you don't have to do so much pressing. And a lot of other clients, you see them when another one of mine, Joe, like just transformed how she stands and how she presents her physique because of how, I don't know if it's a confidence thing, how proud they are, but I think there's also an element to it where you program properly, and strength is the corrective. And I think that more often than not, when I get those first few videos through and I go, right, I want to see those, and then I see them again 4 months later, and I'm like, unbelievable. The difference you can get just from giving someone a few little cues, again, online, but by having a look at those videos all the time, making sure they're on the ball with it. They pick up loads of stuff, and obviously it's easy for me as well because I can kind of say, watch Tom's video, and you might learn how not to do it, so it's easier. But no, that's the benefit, is that that we have in this day and age, is that I can point them in the direction of people who know what they're doing as well, which helps. So the amount of females, I'm like, oh, how am I going to do my back extensions? I'm like, go watch this video by Brett Contreras, because again, I know, I'm like, well, I don't need to send you a video of me doing it.
I literally did that today.
Somebody tear their glute as well, then as well.
somebody was Ali, if you're listening, he does listen. He had cable pull-throughs today, and then I just sent him a picture. Was it not Barbell Shrugged? It was the PDC doing it. PTTC, the Personal Trainer Collective, those guys. Just doing a cable pull through with Lawrence talking over it, and I was like, "Oh, great! I know Lawrence."
Yeah, we won't mention competitors, but that's all right.
They changed their name, but yeah, used to be SBS to PTC. Yeah, I thought it was very interesting when they changed that, but it's cool. Right, have we got anything more to cover on what that weekend is going to be about, or?
I think the last thing to hit on, or the last thing to kind of summarise in my eyes, would be, so before that I was working at a transformation studio, and the biggest thing is in that 12 weeks to get the transformation. So with a screen, what you could determine was what exercises can I load literally to shit in order for me to get this transformation, and what ones do I need to avoid because they haven't got the skill to do it, which could be a disservice, blah, blah, blah. But it kind of now is full circle. You have a rehab guys. I have far too much money guys, clearly, like you do as well. Dan has body comp, but for long term. And then you have people that say want transformations, quick results, and are willing to pay for that, regardless if we think that's good or not. But it kind of all means that the screen, rather than having a bank of exercises, which every PT does, right? Everyone's like, oh, everyone does bench, squat, da-da-da. Even though there is a load of exercise library that you'll show these guys on the day and show there's loads of exercise we can do, it's kind of now what you probably came into it for, and like, well, what exercise should I choose for that person specifically? They'll go to their goals, but also how would I progress that one for that person, rather than just go, well, here's an exercise library that level 2 and level 3 gave me. I'm just going to pick a mix because that's the muscle group.
Yeah, so I think that's totally right. So basically, what we will outline exercises 100% and different like levels of beginner, intermediate, advanced. But the whole point of the whole is to get the guys who come to coach and make their decisions upon what they've been taught, what they see through that client, and how they're coaching themselves, and realize actually in this scenario, me as a coach, I will pick this, this, and this, instead of going, all right, yeah, it's a pull, so I will take this exercise, put it in the pot, this exercise, put it in the pot. You're like, no, you're a coach, this is your decision, this is what you're meant to be doing, use your rationale, which is what we're going to give you. That's the whole point. We're going to make people do that and just basically create their own continuum. I've got mine. It differs to Josh's. It differs to Dan's because of how we think things happen. It will be very, very interchangeable, but the whole point is to have your own little continuum of what and it will generally slightly change depending on client to client, and you won't know that unless you kind of a little bit taught it, but basically try it as well.
And I think the thing it's having, like you just said there, it's having your own continuum. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we've all got slightly different ones, but they're all with this foundation of going over what we're going to go over. Imagine that you get to go to that seminar and come away with it and go, right, I'm now going to develop my own continuum. Like, that's pretty empowering as a coach to be like, this is how I do shit. This is my way of doing it. Like, all of us, we do things slightly differently. The foundations are similar. But that in itself gives you the confidence to go, right, well, I'm doing the right thing, rather than going, oh, what did the textbook say again? What did the textbook say again? No, like, have the balls to go, no, I've got my continuum. I've learned based from all this experience, all this knowledge, and I've seen this in my clients regularly, so I'm going to do it this way based on the fundamental principles that we've discussed.
And I would say, like, the last two things that I think straight away put you over and above near enough 99% of PTs in the industry would be A, you're able to justify every single exercise, which not many people can. You ask a PT, why are you doing that exercise for that specific client? And don't just mention the muscles, as in, oh, it works the biceps. So being able to just justify, oh, because I've seen that in my client and they're now progressing and they regress from here, it's like amazing. And then secondly, Alex kind of hit the nail on the head when he did FMS and spoke about FMS in your podcast, the physio guy. It opens up a dialogue that you're speaking a similar language with healthcare practitioners. Yeah. If you're talking about this sort of stuff to physios or to osteos or something like that, then potentially that dialogue means that you're going to do more of a service to your client, because that osteo and physio is now going to trust you and go, yeah, I'm happy for your client to come see me and go back to you, and come see me, go back to you.
Perfect. I think we summarised it perfectly.
Of course I did. I carry you guys through this. It's not a problem.
I know, it's crazy. Right, I have just sent to you the stupid things on the internet this week, FYI. I think Dan has already seen it. I feel like I've shared it with you, Josh. Or somebody shared it with me, and it might have been you.
I still can't. I can't believe one of the claims in it.
This might force Dan to run over by a couple of minutes.
What the hell?
So it's I don't know. It's called What Science, right? So Science?
CrossFit. CrossFit are trying to go into science now. Like, we're all doomed.
Four reasons why CrossFit induces muscle growth, guys. So we've got number one.
Wait till we get to point 3. Is it
point 3?
This is ridiculous.
Number one is volume. All right, okay. Cool. There's a lot of
volume.
They do a lot of volume, and it's very varied.
Number 4 is my favourite.
Apparently they cited Brad Schoenfeld on that, so we like Brad. So we'll go with that. Number 2, failure. Brilliant. All right, we basically this brings up an anecdotal thing.
If you're a CrossFitter, you are a failure. Exactly correct. You're stupid.
But this one teaches slightly anecdotally. There's a client of, I don't know if it's a client of mine. A guy I've just written a program for decided to test his 1RM on the first day of his program. Who would that be, Josh?
Sorry, mate.
I love the
you got a test. I got to know what I'm aiming towards.
He gave me
hit
numbers.
a PB though.
He did.
That's what matters.
That's how good my program is. Now he's going to run the program, isn't he? Good. All right.
The second bit, right? Failure. Failure is what they get. Yeah. So, but this is just shown. This is just to confirm in volume because it's 3 sets failure at 30%, which I reckon would be more reps anyway.
Josh, I love how you're breaking it down. Like there's far worse.
There's far worse.
I'm about to scroll through. So that doesn't say failure because the one set at 80% didn't give an increase.
Doesn't matter.
But they failed still, so it's not just failure.
We'll share this on the group as well. It's madness.
What's the next?
The next one is
constantly varied.
Constantly varied.
How can you even measure? How can you what?
So they constantly vary the exercises, don't they?
So basically, they're saying that muscle soreness is reduced the second time subjects do the exact same exercise. So therefore, you should constantly adapt and change it. And I'm like, no, that's not what we're saying. That doesn't work.
I enjoy the evidence they've provided. This is from 2001. Current guys, nearly 20
level
years
of
old.
evidence
Medium. Okay, cool. Varied. Yeah.
The last bit, mate.
The last one's the best.
Blood flow restriction.
That is the one, mate. So they're claiming
during high rep thrusters.
So blood flow restriction, where you wrap a band around your arm to restrict the blood flow.
Yeah.
They're basically
injuries
saying,
and blah blah blah.
They're basically saying that doing high rep thrusters shunts liters of blood to the lower body, and then you press over your head, and that means that your triceps don't have any blood in them, and they may be deprived of oxygen. Therefore, it stimulates muscle growth. And it even says in the bottom corner, level of evidence, speculation.
If your tricep hasn't got any blood, then technically you're getting brain damage because your brain must have no blood in it.
It's the most ridiculous thing in the world.
That's not blood flow what?
Restricting blood flow to working muscles. No, you don't understand that all your body's working. Your blood is there in all of it.
It's always going to be there.
What's holding the bar up on her shoulders?
And also, blood flow restriction training means that the blood is pooled as well.
Yeah.
It's pooled there.
The point of blood flow restriction training is so that you've got low load, you're inducing some muscular damage there without having high reps because the blood stays there. So it still increases metabolic damage. That's the point in blood flow restriction. So you don't have to go to wait. I'm well confused by all this. Who is this?
WOD Science. Give them a follow, or don't.
No.
If you want to see some fun stuff. Also, they've missed out basically the picture. So the fifth reason should be gear. According to the first picture, 100%.
Epoch, right? I'm done. I'm blocking. I've seen Epoch in one of their posts. I'm done.
I've got to go anyway. So let's cut it there. I think
all right. Dan's got to leave. We've summarised our weekend. WOD Science is great. Is there anything left you need to say about people who are coming down, Josh? I think what have you said? You got a couple of spaces left if people want to jump on it now.
Yeah, we have got, I think, two or three spaces left. We want to make sure it's not a massive group just because of quality, blah, blah, blah. I think we've got about 15, maybe a bit more than that coming.
And Josh gets scared talking in front of too many people.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, what I'll be doing to the people that have signed up and they're like, I haven't got any information yet, don't worry, email will go out on Friday with all the details on it, etc., etc. So yeah, come and hang out. Apologies that Dan's there, but he's got to tag along. He booked on. He paid for the space. He's like,
I'm learning.
All right, perfect, guys. All right, we'll let Josh go, and we will let Dan go play cricket.
Cheers.
See
you later, guys.
All right, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week.